In a previous video I showed you how I had weathered some very cheap wagons, a bit like this one here, and I've been now working on some coal loads to put in them. Step one is to get a couple of layers of corrugated cardboard, then a few layers on top of thin card. You'll see I've just sort of contoured it slightly to a raised centre part where it's been loaded on, and the next step will be to put some thin paper on top of this to create it into more of a realistic shaped mound. I'm using some black paper when I do it, but you could use white paper and then just paint it black if you wanted, but I've got some thin black paper to hand. So that's the next step. Then you take a piece of black paper and you dip it in water. This is relatively warm water, it softens the paper a bit. Meanwhile, get the cheapest, tattiest old paintbrush you can find and the old dried up bits of PVA glue pretty much, and you spread them around. This has got some lumps in it, that's not going to be a problem. It's all going to add to the unevenness of the surface. And then let most of the water drain off the black paper. Spread it on top. Press it down, especially around the edges. And because it's wet, it should roughly mould to the shape you want. And any excess you will simply cut off when it's dry. There, step two. So here's one of the sort of moulds, if you like. I'm just going to put a bit of black marker pen round the edge, just so that the white card underneath doesn't show through. It's just at the edge. You could have painted this, of course. It's just a bit quicker to use a marker pen, I reckon. Saves getting out a paintbrush, having to wash it up afterwards. Chances are it won't show up though, but anyway, it's black round the edges now. Next we get the ever reliable PVA glue. Smear it on as liberally as you like. The more the merrier, because after this you're going to sprinkle your coal powder on top of your mould. Don't worry about how much white there is. When PVA glue dries, it is transparent, slightly glossy in appearance. Given that some coal is slightly glossy, any reflective bits in your wagon load won't look unrealistic at all. So what I've got now is I've actually ground up a single small piece of coal in a pestle and mortar. You don't need one of these, I just happen to have one. You could use a hammer and you could put your piece of coal in a freezer bag and just bash it away with that. Anyway, I then sprinkle my coal pieces. If you were really fussy, you could sieve the coal into slightly smaller and slightly larger pieces, but I'm not really fussy, so I haven't bothered. And there we go. Leave them to dry. I'll leave it inside the container. Always a good idea to collect any coal that hasn't stuck to it, because that can be reused. So leave that to dry. It takes about half an hour. Shake off the excess coal, and you'll then pop your coal loads into your wagons, and then you've got something like this. Here's some I did earlier. Considering the wagons cost, I don't know, about £1 each, and how much has all the materials that gone into the coal load cost? A couple of pence. There we've got some nice looking wagons for a layout. They actually look pretty realistic, even if they aren't based on an exact scale prototype. And I've just zoomed in a little bit closer so you can see the layer of coal. It's got a slight rise down the middle. If you look at some photographs of coal wagons on the internet, you'll see some have a very noticeable mound in the middle and others are completely flat. Now I reckon this is probably because when they're loaded mechanically through a hopper, there will be a great big heap in the middle, But if a wagon has travelled quite a long way and been shaken up along the railway lines that aren't beautifully smooth, gradually that layer of coal will settle so that it's more evenly spread out. That's just my theory. You may be able to correct me on that. So anyway, it doesn't have to have a huge great heap in the middle, just slightly higher, and that looks pretty realistic to me. So, very cheap wagons. Go for it.